something about the limits of our science-forming abilities. We might discover, for example, that some kinds of questions simply fall beyond the area where we are capable of constructing explanatory theories. And I think we even maybe now have some glimmerings of insight into where this delineation might be between intelligible theories that fall within our comprehension and areas where no such theory is possible. Well, the case that we discussed before may be one. Take the question of, if you go back to the, go back to the early history of science, early origins of science, speculation, and people were raising questions about, say, the heavenly bodies and about the sources of human action. Well, we're asking exactly the same questions now about the source of human action. There's been no progress. We have no idea how to approach this question within the framework of science. We can write novels about it, but we can't construct even false scientific theories about it. We simply have nothing to say when we ask the question, how does a person make a decision in a certain manner and not in some other manner when it's a free decision? That we just have no way of dealing with that issue. On the other hand, the history of physics, let's say, has had substantial advances, and it's very likely, I think, that massive difference in progress in one domain and an absolute blank wall in another reflects the specific properties of our science-forming capacities. We might even be able to show that someday if it's true.
So far, we've been rather talking in this discussion as if all organized thinking is done in language, but of course that in fact isn't so, is it? I mean, one can take all kinds of examples. In music is one that appeals to me very much. If you get a composer like Stravinsky composing a fantastically complicated and original and indeed revolutionary score like that of The Rite of Spring for an enormous orchestra, then he's cerebrating at an original and complicated and very sophisticated level, and he's probably cerebrating in as elaborate a way as anybody else is who's doing anything. And what's more, he's creating a structure which is publicly articulated and so on, and yet words don't come into this process at any point, as far as one can gather. Does that fact and other facts like it pose any threat to your theories?
Well, not really. I mean, in fact, quite the contrary. My assumption is that the mind is not a uniform system, that it's a highly differentiated system. In fact, like the body, it's essentially a system of faculties or organs, and language is simply one of them. We don't have to go to the level of Stravinsky to find examples of thinking without language. I'm sure that everyone who thinks about what he himself is doing, will know at once that much of his thinking doesn't involve language. Or say, well, the thinking of a cat, let's say, plainly doesn't involve language. There are other modes of thought. There are other faculties. And I think that the musical faculty is one which is particularly interesting, I think, because it's extremely likely. In fact, here's an area, in a sense, like physics, that is where very rapid and rich development took place in a way which was over a long period of, say, Western history, in a way which was very intelligible to others. I mean, not immediately, but after a short period. And strikingly, well, there is a striking feature of the 20th century in this respect. That is that the musical creation of the 20th century, I think, is qualitatively different from that of, say, the 18th century, in that it lacks that immediate access or short-term access that was true of the past. One would have to do an experiment to prove it, but I have no doubt that if we took a child of today, two children of today, let's say, or two groups, and taught one of them, say, Mozart, Haydn, and Beethoven, and taught the other one Schoenberg and post-Schoenbergian music, that there would be a very substantial difference in their capacity to comprehend it and deal with it. And that may reflect, in fact, if that's correct, it would reflect something about our innate musical capacities. Points of this nature have been